Hey, everybody, this is Matt Bergman, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Jamboard and sparking collaboration in Google Classroom and beyond. So, we're going to just focus on a couple different things today, focusing on what exactly is Jamboard and how do you use it? How do you use it specifically with Google Classroom? So, talking a little bit about where I'm coming from, I made presentations all over the place, and so I'm just happy to give this information to you today. So, what exactly is this tool called Jamboard? Well, Jamboard is a collaborative digital whiteboard, and it's powered by G Suite. And what's nice about it is that it can act sort of like a collaborative Google Doc, where students can, add information to it. It also can serve as a presentation tool. And so we're going to show you some ideas here in just a second. So, how do you actually use it? Well, let's show you what Jamboard is all about. And I'm just going to move my my picture right over here. When you can go to jamboard.google.com to access it. You can also go right here. This is the Google Apps Launcher. When you go to the Google Apps Launcher, you can look for the Jamboard icon here to start a new one. This is the homepage for Jamboard. And as you can see, I actually have some that are already started, but I can go ahead and hit the plus sign here to start a new Jamboard. What I love about it is that it has some tools that are extremely easy to use. Let me just move down here. So it has a pen. So for example, if you wanted to write using your trackpad, or if you have a tablet, this is great. Just using a tablet, going to jamboard.google.com and using this as a whiteboard. You have an eraser. You also have a pen, a highlighter, a marker, and a brush. And you also have right here sticky notes. So if you wanted to create almost like an interactive Padlet, a lot of people will do that. It functions very much like that. I can show you how to do that here in just a few minutes. It also, if you've seen that on Nearpod has that available as well, and it allows you to add post-it notes. So if I wanted to add a post-it note, let's say for instance, addition facts, okay, and hit save. It'll just post it right here. I can post as many as I want. I'm going to hit cancel, and then I can move them around and I can resize and reshape them. Not only can you put post-it notes, but you can also put images. So if you had an image on your computer that you wanted to upload, or your tablet, you could select it from your device. When you do that, I can go ahead and put a screenshot. So let me put a screenshot right up here. This is an emoji mood meter here. And let's say, for instance, I wanted to, let me actually do this. I'm going to cut this and clear this frame. I'm going to paste this. And let's say that I wanted to give my students a lesson where I wanted to give them this individual mood meter, and then I wanted to go and add additional frames for maybe math problems that I wanted them to solve. I could keep on adding pictures right here. I could change the background, as you can see. And I can share that. So I could share that directly with my students, and you can share it directly in Google Classroom, believe it or not. So if I wanted to have my students complete this sample lesson, okay, I can go right into my Google Classroom. I can create an assignment, and I can add that assignment. It's a file from Google Drive, and I can find it right here. It's going to be my sample lesson. Let me see if I can do sample lesson. Here it is. Okay, so I can put this in. Now, this is what I love about it being like a Google Doc, is that you can make a copy for each student. So each student can get their own individual copy here to practice. So you could have them complete this activity on their own, or if you wanted to have students view this file and collaborate as a class, you could most certainly do that right here. So those are ways to share it via Google Classroom. If you were in, say, a Google Meet, or you were in Zoom, you could simply go right up here to the share button. And if you went up to the share button here, you could change this so that anyone with the link, and you can change it from viewer to edit. So that would allow everybody in the class to edit the same whiteboard. Here's a trick for you. if you're in Zoom or you're in Google Meets and you wanted to have each individual student have their own individual copy, okay, you could copy this link right here, and I would paste it in the chat. So just keep that in mind. I would paste it in the chat. I'm just going to show you on this Jamboard because I have it in front of me, but I would paste this in my chat. And as you can see here, every single Google document that you ever have, okay, whether it's a slideshow presentation, whether it's a doc, whether it's a sheet, always has this word edit, okay? If it's a view only copy or it's an edited copy, it always has that word edit. If I get rid of that, okay, and I type in the word copy and I put this in my chat, what's going to happen is this. Watch. I'm going to cut this, paste it right up here so I can show you. It forces you to make a copy. So that's a good trick if you don't necessarily want to use Google Classroom and you want to share that via Zoom or via Google Meet. Okay, so what could students do with this particular example right here? Well, they could use the pen, okay, to circle how they're feeling today. They could use the text box. They could also use shapes. So there's shapes that they could draw. So maybe they want to draw an arrow instead. So they want to do this. It is limited on the number of colors. So you can see that there's only like about 6 different colors that you can choose from. You can also choose different colored pen inks. But once again, that's 6 different examples here. As a teacher, this is a great presentation tool if you wanted to present information to students. One thing that research has found is that Khan Academy type of videos, when you're doing screencasts and things like that, are actually much more effective than having a slide deck for our students. So you could definitely use something like this to write things down, to teach, to show things. And you even have this laser pointer here, which, look at that, it disappears, that you could emphasize certain things. When you want to clear things out, just hit clear frame and it'll go away. You can even zoom in or zoom out. So there's a lot of different tools with Jamboard here. What I also like is these 3 little dots up at the top, where you could download this as a PDF. You could save this as an image. You could even make a copy or just completely delete it if you would like. So what are some examples of some things that you could do with Jamboard? Because, it is one of those tools that it looks cool, but like, how do you actually, go through and use it? So one idea is through synchronous learning. So if you're using Google Meet or Google or Zoom and Jamboard, you could do that. From an asynchronous standpoint using Google Classroom. So the difference between synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous is live, it's happening right now, like a Google Meet or a chat. Google Classroom can take place whenever the student has time, whether you have time. So it's not necessarily instantaneous communication. So some ideas that you may want to consider is, first of all, if, say, for instance, you have an existing worksheet and you want to take this existing worksheet or image of something like the water cycle, and you want students to be able to take notes on this, you could throw this in Google Classroom. You could have students take notes on it, use the annotation tools or the text tools, depending on their device. And that way they can keep track of things. You can help them assess their knowledge on certain things. Okay. Remember, you can change the background. And so if you're changing the background, you have 6 different options here for changing the background besides the white blank background. You have dots, you have line paper, graphing paper of 2 different sorts, and then a blue and a black background. Okay. Idea number 2 is perhaps you want to demonstrate stuff. So maybe what you want to do is create a screencast, sort of like what I'm doing right now, and you add different pictures. One of the cool things is that you can actually take those pictures and you can move them around while you're explaining things. And so that could be a great demonstration. Or maybe what you're trying to do is talk about a particular concept live with students via Zoom or via Google Meet. You could share your screen and you could do that as well. Another option too is to simply make a copy of the different parts of water cycle as you see here, and have students put those different parts where they're supposed to be, and then use the annotation tools to label them. So it does offer those options for teachers, and it does offer those options for students as well. So, I mean, there's all sorts of different ways that you could possibly use this, especially like moving the objects around. Retelling a story is one way. I mean, defining vocabulary terms. I mean, think about this. If you had a Frere model, which is, if you're not familiar with a Frere model, it's a quadrant, 4 quadrants to define a vocab word. So you have your definition, your own definition, an example, and maybe a non-example. Sometimes they mix it up and they have like an image that you could add there as well. So this allows you to then give students a Jamboard, have them define a vocabulary term, and then turn it back into you. And so now you have a whole classroom full of these Frere models of different vocabulary terms. Or you could make one Jamboard and you could duplicate. So let me show you how that would work. So if I go right here and I wanted to make that Frere model that I'm talking about, what I might want to do is I might want to create some different boxes here. Okay, so I can go ahead and create those different boxes. And if I want to duplicate, and all I'm doing, by the way, is just copying and pasting things right now. But if I want to duplicate this slide, all I have to do is click on this arrow that's pointing down, and then I click on these 3 little dots and I can duplicate it. So if you're in that type of situation, what I would recommend doing is assigning a student to a particular slide. So, you know, assigning maybe a group of students. So group number 1, you're going to work on slide number 1. Group number 2, you're going to work on slide number 2, just so that they know. Okay, that's going to be extremely important when you do something like that. So that could be an example of using Jamboard. So kind of going back with that whole duplicating part is perhaps you give a math problem, as you see right here, and you want students to collaborate on the same document, and you want them to be able to solve this problem. You want to see their progress. You could most certainly use that duplicate part right there, and then they could use the drawing tools to solve that math problem. It's great for grammar practice. So maybe you have a sample paragraph that you want students to look for the subject and predicate in each sentences. You want them to play matching, match the word and the definition. Maybe you have some sample test questions. Maybe you want to illustrate a particular concept. It's a great way of doing it. Now, the other thing too is the idea of crowdsourcing ideas with Post-it notes. And so on Jamboard, one of the cool things about the Post-it note feature is that students can add Post-it notes via the Post-it note feature. And then what you can do is you can actually move them around. It's very much like Padlet. And you do have some control on what you can add, delete, and move around. You can redo the size. But this actually might be good for naming the characteristics of, say, a mammal. So let's say, for instance, you got all the characteristics of a mammal. And maybe what you want to do is you want to compare and contrast that to reptiles. And so as you can see right here, I'm just taking the brainstormed options here and I'm just moving them around so that then we can, make sure that we know the differences between a mammal and a reptile. Another cool thing you could do with this is perhaps you have students brainstorm ideas on what are characteristics of mammals and reptiles, and then you post this to Google Classroom for homework and make a copy for each student. And then you could have each student practice this on their own rather than as a whole entire class. So good idea of doing that. Could be an awesome way to do exit tickets, those Post-it note features, compare and contrast, checking for understanding, brainstorming ideas, even assessing background knowledge. You know, a lot of times what happens is whenever we're introducing a topic, we need to understand what that topic is. And so what we're doing is we're using actually the back part of our brain to gain understanding of that. And that back part of our brain is responsible for the senses around us. So using our sight, our smell, our touch, things like that. And so what then happens is we fill in the gaps that with our understanding. If we don't necessarily understand something, a lot of times we'll go back to our background knowledge, our background experiences. And so sometimes using these Post-it notes allow us to see, okay, what do students already know? What misconceptions do they have, and how can we address some of those misconceptions so that they're filling in the right pieces of the puzzle rather than the wrong pieces of the puzzle. Another great idea too could be analyzing text. So for instance, maybe I have this text right here, and we're doing what is called a book snap or a text snap. And if you're not familiar with that idea, it's taking a passage and combining it with Snapchat in some ways, not actually using Snapchat, but using the quickness of Snapchat, and how sometimes kids will use that to share things, share some of their favorite things, or share funny things. What we can do instead is we can use that for text, where you're using the highlighting feature right here. We're using the text feature to put down a keyword or a phrase that's going to help our person understand this paragraph, and then maybe a type of visual. Now, I like to take it a step further by using sometimes a tool like Flipgrid or Seesaw, where students are actually explaining it in 30 seconds or less. That's where the Snapchat type of thing comes in, because it's very quickly, have to annotate your example and share your example. But this could actually be a great way of just getting students to highlight text, put a keyword, put a visual, and then maybe use it as a discussion tool if you're virtual and you have to use Google Classroom, or not Google Classroom, but Google Meet or Zoom to discuss it. It might be a great way to have students share their expertise on that. Text rendering protocols. Another cool thing that you could possibly do is use Jamboard to help analyze a text. And one of my favorite text rendering protocols is the 4A's model, where you're talking about what you agree with the author, assumptions that they made, arguments, and maybe what you want to aspire to. So you could definitely have kids create their own Jamboard, maybe outside of the classroom as they're reading the text. And then as they come into the classroom, sharing that, maybe sharing their screen, or maybe sharing or turning this in to Google Classroom, and then you can pull it up and you can share with the class what they thought. It's a great discussion tool, because let's face it, screencasts should be used for instruction. Google Meet and Zoom should be used for going further. The instructional part already occurred. Now it's practice. Now it's digging deeper. Now it's answering questions, things like that. So, hey, if you have any questions, thank you guys very much for checking this out. I'm glad that I was able to help you. Here's my blog address if you need it. I'm on Twitter as well. And then this is the presentation link right here if you need it. It is case sensitive, so just make sure that you are typing in capitals where there's capitals. So it's bit.ly /2 capital Q 78 capital C lowercase j 5 and then a capital N. So thank you guys very much, and hope you have a great day.